My name is Bruce Guthrie, and I am the head of theatre and film here at the NCPA. We're in lockdown mode now, but thank you to Coconut Theatre for inviting me along to be part of the Chai Wayan Rangmanch. So we're starting here, and it is 6 p.m. and we're on Facebook Live, and I am here to talk to you a bit about directing, and particularly directing on the international stage. So I'm just going to wait for a few people just to be logging in because we've literally just started. So I wonder how your lockdown is going. For us, we were in the middle of producing several things here at the NCPA, including a schools initiative called NT Connections, which was in association with the National Theatre in London. And it was, we were just poised for the school kids to come here to the NCPA to perform. And unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we had to postpone that session. But welcome everybody, welcome. And we were in the middle of producing a play called A Small Family Business, which we were doing in collaboration with AK Various, who are a terrific company here. And hopefully we're going to be able to push that one a little bit further in the year as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my career, just to give you a bit of an introduction to me and the type of work that I've done and what my journey has been. Hi Anaya, it's great to see you. And that we're just going to have a bit of a chat about that journey. So I'm from Scotland originally, which is in the north of the UK. And I grew up in a place that's just outside of a place called Stirling, which is very close to Edinburgh, about 30 miles away from Edinburgh. So it was a fun childhood. I had fantastic parents, and I did a lot of youth theatre as well as I was growing up. So I was very lucky that my school was very active. I did a lot of singing. I'm a trained professional singer, and I also did a lot of youth theatre. And when I was at youth theatre, I learned about drama school and went to a drama school just outside of London called the Guildford School of Acting, which is a conservatoire. And I trained as an actor for 3 years. So I did my BA honours degree in acting there. And as I was about to graduate, a friend of mine who's a fellow actor threw a play at me, and he said, I would like you to direct this because you're quite good at organising things. And I read the play for me by Frank McGuinness, who's an Irish playwright. And it was a beautiful three-handed play that was set in Lebanon during the 1980s. And it's about 3 political prisoners, and it's based on true life events. So we rehearsed the play and we took it to the Edinburgh Festival because I lived just outside of Edinburgh. And we played sold-out houses because at home is that I got my mum to whip everybody up into a bit of a frenzy, and we loaded double-decker buses full of people and took them from my hometown through to watch the show. Until we sold out, and we were completely packed, and the show was very well reviewed. And the actors and I made a deal whereby that we used all the money that we made from that show to take it down to London, and we put it on as a special one-off production in London. And I was very much making it up as I went along and learning on the job. But it was a terrific experience, and I learned so much through just the act of doing stuff, and was able to put so much of my training into directing. Actually, is that a lot of the training that I did as an actor has really informed the way that I direct actors, because I know what that feels like. I know the challenges and how difficult that can be because I've done it in front of audiences, and I've been lucky enough to have appeared in plays professionally in London as well. Very few. I've made my decision, I made my leap to being a director quite early in my career. And then I directed another 2 plays, both of which were very well received, but I felt that I'd hit the limits of my knowledge. And so I wanted to learn, I wanted to train properly to be a director. And so I applied for various different directing jobs, being resident director, being assistant director on various different things. And I worked for free on quite a few of them as well, just to get a bit of experience and to be in the room with another director and to learn from them and learn how they speak to actors and how they design their plays and how they do things. So I did that for about 1.5 to 2 years, and during that period of time I got a little lucky break. I met a very good friend of mine who's a fellow director called Ruth Carney, and I assisted her, and during the process of assisting her I was introduced to a producer who was working on the production of Shadowlands by Bill Nicholson, who wrote the movie Gladiator. And that was working with Charles Dance, who you might know as Tywin Lannister in Game of Thrones, and Janie Dee, who's a multi-award winning actress back in the UK. So I learnt loads doing that. It was really fantastic, and learnt lots from Charles and learnt lots from Janie, and just learnt lots from being in and around such a well-experienced company of people. And from there is that I was lucky enough, I'd written to the National Theatre in London, and I'd written to them with an idea of training with them. I wanted to be a staff director, I wanted to be an assistant there. And during that time with the National, during that time of writing to the National, I'd written to them 6 times and hadn't actually had a reply from those letters. But as soon as I'd done this big West End show, I got a reply. And it just so happened that I was doing this great show, I was meeting these guys at this building, and they invited me to take part in the Studio Directors course, which is a 2-week course that the National hold. I don't know if they still hold it now, but we're young directors, as I was once upon a time, were able to go and train for 2 weeks and meet each other and talk about plays, and we would meet distinguished practitioners. I got to work with people like Katie Mitchell, who's an incredible director who works primarily in European theatre, but a very celebrated director. Got to work with Matthew Dunster, who directed things like The Pillowman, which was about to happen in the West End, and all sorts of things there. And then I also got to work with people like Emma Rice as well. So Emma Rice has got her own company, and that used to be the artistic director of the Globe. So we got exposed to a whole host of different people, and lighting designers and sound designers and all of those things. I was at the NT in 2008 and 2009, and I've been backwards and forwards ever since. But 2008 and 2009 was when I was there for the longest period of time. Thank you. So I did that course, and at the end of that course, I asked if I could be a staff director for them. And long story short, I ended up becoming a staff director there for a year, which was working in the building and meeting all these fantastic directors like Richard Eyre and Howard Davies and Deborah Warner were the 3 main directors that I worked with on new plays and existing plays. And that was a huge learning curve. I also got to direct John Lithgow, who's an actor who you might know from things like The World According to Garp and Shrek. He plays Lord Farquaad in Shrek, and he was also in a TV show called Third Rock from the Sun. He's one of those actors that I grew up watching, so it was a real privilege to be able to work with him on his one-man show, and I directed him in that. I left the National, and then we get on to the international stuff now. So that was my kind of like my career up until that point of getting myself started, then doing a lot of assisting work and associate work, and then directing a few plays myself. And then I worked on a thing called the Bridge Project, where I got to work with Oscar-winning director Sam Mendes, and this was Richard III, and it was a global tour. And this was just a different scale of work to anything that I'd seen before, and I hadn't really travelled up until this point. I was 30 years old, and I'd seen some stuff in Europe, and I'd visited countries around Europe, but I hadn't really been anywhere else. And so to get that opportunity to tour around 12 different cities on 4 different continents taking Shakespeare, was incredible. I mean, it was an 11-month gig, and we started in London, and we went to Epidavros in Greece, which is about a 14,000-seater Greek amphitheatre, which has got perfect acoustics, so you can stand in the middle of the stage and just speak normally, and you can be heard. It's really incredible, and we did 3 performances there, and it was completely sold out. And the Greek audience was phenomenal. They were hanging on every word, and we played at the Old Vic Theatre in London, which is a beautiful theatre on the South Bank, you know, just off of the South Bank in Waterloo, which is a theatre that I'd always wanted to work at, actually. Ever since I knew it existed, I was like, wow, I really want to do something here. And somebody wrote about Peter Hall. This is, I actually saw the Peter Hall Company performing there at the Old Vic, and I think it was 2003. He was a wonderful, wonderful director who did an awful lot of things for world theatre, actually. So yeah, so we did. So I worked with Sam, and who's just the most phenomenal director. He's one of the best handlers of people that I have ever seen. Just so insightful, so clear about what it is that he wants, and really collaborative as well in the rehearsal space. But outside the rehearsal space, just forensic in his detail. Really gifted man, and a lovely person as well. I'm sure that people will be happy to hear. But Bridge Project lasted for a year, and that we toured to places like Beijing, we went to Singapore, we went to Hong Kong, we went to Spain, we went to Turkey, we went to San Francisco, and we just went all over the place, and we finished in New York. And that was quite extraordinary to be able to live there. So it was all good. And it was an extraordinary experience for so many reasons. It was incredible to be able to see how a 400-year-old play by William Shakespeare, long dead and gone, resonated so differently in so many different countries. And I think that really spoke to it really speaks to Shakespeare as a writer, and to the themes that that he manages to pull out. My favourite Shakespeare play, and why? Well, it would have to be Macbeth, wouldn't it? Given the fact that I am Scottish and it's the Scottish play. But it is actually my favourite Shakespeare play. I love it because it's got everything in it. It's got witches in it, it's got curses in it, it's got prophecy, it's got fighting, it's got kings and queens, it's got murder, treason and plot. It's got everything in it. So I love Macbeth. And you're not supposed to say that in theatres, but I do. So doing the Bridge Project was a real watershed moment for me as a director, because as the associate director, I travelled from country to country and put the show up in every country. So when a lot of the space were radically different, we went from doing an outdoor space and 14,000 seats in Epidavros to venues that were 600 seats in the north of Spain. And we also went from there to other huge venues. So one week we would be in a huge venue, and then in the other week then we would be in a really small venue, and that would have quite a big impact on the show. We also because it was such a big tour, we had 4 separate sets. So there was a set that we were playing on, there was a set that we had just played on that was being dismantled in the previous venue, and then there was a set that we were going to play on that was being built, and one was in transit as well. So you needed that level of complexity for the operation in order to be able to pull off the scale of world tour that we were doing. It was huge, but so much fun. And those challenges that we had on a week by week basis really stayed with me, and was the best experience that I could have had. And the complexities of dealing with different cultures in theatre, from backstage crew to teams, everybody like that. I wasn't ever affiliated with the Donmar Warehouse, but I do know Michael Grandage very well, who was the artistic director there, and Sam Mendes actually founded the Donmar Warehouse as well, as as a theatre to what is now the Donmar Warehouse. It was a space prior to that as well called the Warehouse. But Sam founded it as the Donmar Warehouse, and then Michael Grandage ran it for 10 years as well. And I came very close to working there as well at one point, but that is another story for another time. So on the international stage is taking shows all around the country, taking shows all around the world as well, has been a huge part of my career. And it was through doing Bridge Project that I ended up working with my friends at Singapore Repertory Theatre, because we toured to Singapore. And as a result of that touring experience, is a job opportunity came up, and I got a phone call in January of 2012 asking me if I wanted to go and direct a large-scale Shakespeare for the Singapore Repertory Theatre. And so as soon as Bridge Project finished in New York in April, I flew to Singapore. And we did a production of Twelfth Night in Singapore. And it was an incredible experience, because it was just this huge production in a park, which is 2,000 seats and a massive set. And you're able to do kind of like large-scale Shakespeare and picnic in the park. And they ran for about 20 performances, and that audiences would come out and that they would lay out their mats and that they would picnic under the stars and watch Shakespeare. And we were doing that in conditions that are quite similar to here in India, outdoor, and it was extremely exhausting. Sharing my experience about touring worldwide and flexibility of sets, light and sound. So we toured our own team. So we had our own technical team that went with us, who had to interact with people at different venues. And there was always a variety of different challenges and discussions that we would have with everybody who is involved with those venues. So you would send forward your plans, you would send forward your tech rider, the stuff that they were going to provide for us. And then you would get there and you would talk to the venue manager, you would talk to the resident production manager. And we would use a mixture of lights that we could tour and sound equipment that we could tour, and the stuff that was already in the venue as well. So we just hoped that the stuff that they had was all there. We toured our own props as well. Everything all got packed up at the end of every week. So we would tour our own sets, our own furniture, our own props, a selection of lights, a selection of sound equipment, video console, monitors, actually, because it was live music in the show as well, so we needed monitors so that the musical director could conduct the onstage musicians as well. And actually we came into a problem with that, because one of the venues that we toured to had their own flat screen monitors, and they were very proud of this. They were very proud of the fact that they'd spent a lot of money on these, but they didn't work for us because there was a half-second delay. And so what the MD was conducting and playing in his pit was out of time with what was being played on the stage. So we had to go lo-fi with that. So we had to get, kind of like the TVs out and just do it the way that we've done it. But there was big falling outs over that. There was big arguments about that kind of way of working. But we got there and the show went on. And you're right, I am very, very lucky. So yeah, to have been working with all those great. But I've been back to Singapore 4 times since that first initial meeting, and had a brilliant time working there. And working, on a variety of different shows with them. 3 Shakespeares that I directed, and then 1 play that I directed with them. So they're a great company to work with. Back in the UK is that I've worked on a variety of different shows. I directed a huge musical called Rent, which is I directed the 20th anniversary production of it, and had the most incredible time with that. Part of my research trip for that, because I love to do research for plays. I love to immerse myself in the world of the show. And I went and I met the author. The author passed away actually before the first preview of the show. It's a very famous story about Jonathan Larson and how he never actually got to see the show that he worked on for more than 7 years. He never got to see the premiere. He died the night before the very first show of it. And I got to meet his parents and got to meet his, got to speak to his sister. and got to meet a lot of his friends. And his friends gave me a tour around New York and around the places that they used to hang out. And they told me about the inspiration that he had for making this. He told me about what it was. They told me about what it was that had driven this man to create this piece. And Rent is based on La Boheme, and it's a modern adaptation of it. It's modern adaptation during the height of the HIV epidemic in New York City. And it was iconic. It was a groundbreaking musical at the time, and in fact the writers of musicals like Hamilton have turned around and said that Rent was one of the main inspirations that they had growing up. And so it was a huge task to bring something like that back to life, and it hadn't historically done that well in the UK. It had opened in the West End and it had closed about 18 months later, and it just didn't take. I think it was maybe a little bit too early for the UK when it first premiered. And so we did this new version of it, and it was a huge hit. And I was incredibly worried about it because it's a big musical and it's a big task, and it's, you know, it's somebody's legacy that you're dealing with. It's the writer's legacy. It's his parents and his sister have entrusted you with the rights to create this show, and that for me is a great honour. And so our work was, you know, that we did on that really came from a place of real heart and real soul. So I think that, you know, that doing a show like that was incredibly moving for everybody who was involved in it, because a lot of the people who worked on that show had grown up listening to it and were massive fans of it. So being able to tour that around the UK and get the sort of responses that they were getting was huge. So I did Rent, and then the next big thing that I did was a play called Man to Man, which I took to the Edinburgh Festival. And Man to Man was a play, one-person show that I directed with the artistic director of a company called Frantic Assembly, a guy called Scott Graham. And Scott is still the artistic director of Frantic Assembly and a good friend. And it was an amazing experience to work with somebody who works primarily in physicality, and for me, who's very text-based. And we had a very, very good rapport and a very good relationship. So we worked together and we worked on that, and that we premiered the show in Wales at the Wales Millennium Centre in a very small theatre there to see how it would go. And Wales Millennium Centre were the people who commissioned it. They were fantastic with us and they really believed in the show. So we ran it for a week and it got incredible reviews. And as a result of that, we decided to take it to the Edinburgh Festival. So we had to, once again, multi-sets. We had to create another set for it to make it fit into the space. So we raised money for that, and we got fantastic donations from the Peterson family, who are good friends of mine in Cardiff, who I've done multiple events for. I've directed and created multiple charity events for the Welsh Guards and for the NSPCC. So that's the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. So they very generously backed the show to take it to Edinburgh, and we took it to the Edinburgh Festival. And I remember in a 200-seater theatre, the first two performances of it played to 10 people. So it was 10 people, and they were mostly my family, and I was just distraught at the idea that this show just wasn't going to take off in the way that I hoped it would. And then we had the press night, where members of the press would come to review it, which is really critical in Edinburgh, is that you need the critics to come and see it, and you need the critics to like your show if your show is going to do well. So I was terrified that the critics weren't going to like it, and it ended up that the reviews came out the following day, and we went from having 10 people in to being full, basically because we got a 5-star review from the Guardian newspaper, which is a huge deal in the UK. And then other newspapers came and watched it, and other critics came and watched it, and the word of mouth got out about the show, and the show just went clean. It was completely sold out for the run. And as a result of that is that I ended up meeting Porrick Cusack. So Porrick Cusack was somebody who I met at the National Theatre, and he's somebody who is a producer who has worked all over the world. And he came and saw Man to Man and loved it and wanted to take it on the road. So we did a UK tour of Man to Man, and we took it up and down the UK. And then we went to the Brooklyn Academy of Music in New York City and played as part of a prestigious festival called the Next Wave Festival. And it was completely sold out. And we had a brilliant time there. It was just an amazing space. BAM, where I'd been with Richard III all those years prior to that. And then coming back and being able to take a show that I had imagined directing, you know, kind of like years before, that I'd imagined directing at BAM ever since I knew it existed as well. And to be able to take a show that I'd directed there and putting it on there as part of a festival like that was a real kind of like bucket list moment. So yeah, so it was that was incredible. And then as a result of that show, I got an invite to come to India to direct a play here at the NCPA, and I directed Constellations here in 2018 was the first production of it, working with Jim Sarb and Mansi Multani, and I had a terrific time working here at the NCPA, and I had a terrific time working with the team, the creative team, because half the creative team were based in London and half the creative team were based here, and it was great. You know, we worked through the script here, we rehearsed here at the NCPA, and then we got into the technical rehearsals, and it was new ground for everybody because a lot of the people I'd never worked with before, and but it all came together, and it was a really satisfying experience on the whole. I had a great time, and I left India with quite a heavy heart actually, because I was like, well, I don't know when I'm going to be back here. I don't know if we'll do Constellations again. I don't know what we'll do. So I was then asked about 7 months, 8 months later, if I would consider coming out to be the new head of theatre and film, and that after much discussion about it and much discussion about potential kind of like sort of opportunities here in India, we decided that we were going to push forward with it, and I accepted the role, and I'm really grateful to be here. I've had a tremendous time working for the NCPA so far. Been here for 9 months, and 3 of those have been spent, you know, with the coronavirus situation, which I know is incredibly difficult for everybody, and especially for people who work in theatre at the moment. And everybody's working very hard to try and find solutions to it. I noticed a lot of questions of people asking about, well, what are we going to do? The real answer to that is we're working on it. There's a lot of different things that are happening out there. There's a lot of different initiatives. There's a lot of great online stuff. I myself have been doing a lot of one-to-one sessions with people and getting to know people who work in the industry out here, and just getting to meet people across the country as well, arts leaders from all over the world and arts leaders from all sorts of organisations. But you know, I mean, like, sort of, our chairman's been very clear about the idea of you know, kind of like, sort of, that everybody is trying to find a solution to this problem and trying to find what the next step is going to be. But the main message is that everybody's got to stay safe and everybody's got to look after each other, and it's tricky. We want to pick up with the stuff that unfortunately got cancelled due to the coronavirus, or postponed due to the coronavirus. This is that we want to be able to engage with people. We want to be able to work with companies and help everybody to get back on their feet. But it's really tricky to know anything and to know what anyone can do at this point in time. But we would love to be able to pick it back up with a lot of the stuff that has been put in stasis at the moment, and really hope that something happens with the situation soon. In terms of what we've got going on at the moment for the NCPA is that we are doing the NCPA at Home series, which we've been running on YouTube, which has been a lot of past productions, and that there's also there's a series of talks with Tata Literature Live, which has been terrific, and have been viewed by thousands of people across the last 8 to 10 weeks during the coronavirus, and it's got a hugely positive response. So thank you to everybody who's been watching. Who is my favourite actor or actress and why? That's so difficult to know, actually, because there are so many, and so many for so many different reasons. That, you know, it's, in terms of, you know, people that I've worked with, is that I loved working with Charles Dance. I also loved working with Kathleen Turner and Ian McDermott. Kathleen, you know, is very well known for, you know, playing Jessica Rabbit in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but that she's a Golden Globe winning actress, and you know, it was just fantastic to be able to work with her and to be able to direct her. And in terms of, you know, kind of like some people that I watch on screen, is that there's a huge variety of different actors that I really like, and it just depends. It changes on a daily basis. You know, I love you know a variety of different performances. Grotowski, you know, the question is about Grotowski and about Peter Brooks. I love Peter Brooks. I had the great privilege of meeting him, and he's just a font of knowledge. You can see loads of talks that he does on YouTube, and they're just, you know, endlessly fascinating. Not just about Shakespeare, but about directing and about life and about, you know, kind of like everything. He's an incredibly courageous director who has followed, you know, kind of like his instincts as opposed to gone for the easy option. So I've got huge admiration for him, and I love things like The Empty Space. It's a book that I go back to time and time again. Grotowski, I don't really know as much about, to be honest, and don't really have much of an opinion on Grotowski's work. My favourite play, that's very difficult, but I think I'm gonna go with The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I think it's one of the most perfect plays ever written. This is particularly that moment in the third act, and spoilers for anybody, but I think that the moment in the third act, the trial scene, where his wife, out of love, breaks character and lies on behalf of lies to save, is just one of the most heartbreaking scenes that I've ever read or seen in theatre. I think that would probably, if I'm pushed, would be my favourite play. Do you follow any Indian actor, specifically any theatre actor? Naseeruddin Shah is, you know, kind of like, is somebody who's held in such great renown, and I've seen a lot of work in my time here at Prithvi Theatre. I've been around to, you know, kind of like to see stuff at St Andrews, and I've been to see stuff all over the city as much as I possibly can, as well as stuff here at the NCPA, and been getting to know as much about the Indian scene as possible, which is fascinating, and some terrific work going on. And you know, Jim Saab, who I've worked with on 2 occasions so far, I've had a wonderful time working with him. The Empty Space is brilliant. Indian plays that I've enjoyed, I really enjoyed Dick Behen. I really enjoyed that. And there's been a variety of different shows that I've seen. I loved Stories in a Song as well. I really enjoyed that performance. It was just such fun and so wonderful. Those are kind of like 2 plays that kind of stand out. I mean, Dick Behen was just very funny. I thought it was very well done, very well acted, and it was very funny. So good. For the uninitiated, which play would I recommend? It's an interesting one, that, because there are so many great ones, and it kind of depends on what your taste is. I've already mentioned The Crucible, and I do love Arthur Miller's plays, and think that they're really strong. I love the Greeks. I love that sort of theatre. It's kind of like it's the home of theatre. But that, you know, going back through Shakespeare and going through some modern plays as well. There's a lot of modern playwrights that I really like Duncan Macmillan is really interesting, and people like James Graham and people like Carol Churchill as well, who's quite a challenging writer, is that, you know, I enjoy looking at a variety of different things, really. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things, and it depends on my mood, really. Part of the, you know, my take on Indian theatre. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love how immediate it is. I love how raw it is, and how passionate everybody who's involved in it is. It's you know, and there's such a variety of stories, and I want to see as many stories as possible. I want to go out and see as many different pieces in as many different languages. I've been to see plays in Marathi and Gujarati and Urdu as well, which has been great. And even although I don't speak the languages, I've still got an awful lot out of them. And you can see the craft and you can see the detail that's gone into that work, and it's very, it's just very fascinating and very good. And it's something that I think that, you know, more people should be seeing. Do you plan to direct any plays in India? I would love to direct plays in India. I'd love to direct plays anywhere at the moment, and hopefully we will be able to get back to that at some point. Thoughts on David Mamet? I'm a big fan, actually. Is that I think that a lot of his plays, I'm a big fan of his work. Maybe not some of the things that he said, but that I think that even movies like The Untouchables is very good, but that Glengarry Glen Ross is kind of is a fantastic and frightening portrayal of you know, kind of like machismo and misogyny. I think that that his work is really very good. You know, I can't really say anything more than that, other than that, you know, he's one of the most celebrated playwrights of all time. Oleanna's deeply odd and kind of like disturbing but well written play. I think that Speed the Plough is incredibly funny, but once again is kind of to do with toxic masculinity as well. So it's kind of interesting. Do you plan to direct any mainstream movies? I would love to direct mainstream movies, but we'll just have to wait and see. I don't have any plans at the moment. I think that we'll have to wait and see kind of like sort of what the future might hold. But for me at the moment, the future is all about India, and it's all about the NCPA, which, you know, I'm enjoying immensely working here with a really dedicated team. And we hope to be doing more at some point in the future. We really, really do, and everybody, you know, is hoping that this situation is resolved. My thoughts about Harold Pinter. Love Pinter. Challenging. I didn't always love Pinter though. I must admit that when I first saw a production of The Birthday Party in the West End, is that I struggled with it. But when you see it done, and when you get used to the style of it, you realise just how clever and how charged with so much emotion and energy it is, and just how he's such a unique writer. And I hope that, you know, that I'll get to direct one of his plays at some point. I saw a really interesting season of work, which was to mark his birthday, and it was kind of like a whole year's worth of work that was done. Jamie Lloyd, who's a director who I know, who had directed this entire year's worth of Harold Pinter's work, and it was really, really good. It was really amazing to get to see a lot of one-act plays that really didn't get performed that often, but you were able to see them as part of this whole season with really tremendous actors in each of the roles. So that was great. But yeah, Pinter's he's a big deal, isn't he? And well worth reading if people are interested. I'll just give you a couple of just quick thoughts about auditioning, because once again, it's the thing. It's an actor's worst nightmare, really, is the auditioning process, and how tricky that can be for an actor, because you do all of this work and all of this prep into creating a character. You then come and that you present it to a director and a producer and whoever else it is that's involved in that process, and they are then going to judge you. And that one of the biggest things that I would say is that is that for actors just to concentrate on creating the character. Just create the character, that's all that you can control, really. So the more work that you do in creating the character, the better equipped that you'll be for the audition, because there's so much about an audition that you can't control, but you can control what you do prior to it and how you present it, and then that's it. And then you've got to go away and forget about it, because then it's down to somebody else's decision. And in that work that you do, just remember how much you love acting, and just remember how much you know, how passionate you are with it, and that passion will absolutely come through. And the other big thing is that remember that we want you to be good. Directors and writers and producers want actors to be fantastic. We want them to be amazing. We want them to answer the problem that we have of casting this role, and that's what we want. All that we want is the best person for the job, and as long as you can trust that and come into us with that in your head and in your mind, then we're all going to, you know, do much better out of it, and it'd be much more productive. I would say about directing a Bollywood movie is that I need to watch a lot more Bollywood movies. I do enjoy them, but I need to watch more of them before I can say whether I would want to direct them at all. Do you have theatre audiences in many countries? Do you like Indian theatre audiences and the love for theatre? Yes, I do. I do very much so. I've done quite a few Q&As after shows, so question and answer sessions after shows, and I find that a lot of the questions that get asked are very insightful, and not the normal questions that would be used to being getting asked, you know, kind of like sort of in a lot of Q&As around the world. It's quite specific here to India. During Seawall, is that a lot of the questions were about faith, and were about how that, you know, kind of like, so what our opinions and relationship with God were. And I won't say that it's something I've not thought about, but it wasn't necessarily something, that wasn't the thing that really stood out about the play to me, but it did for quite a lot of people, and I found that quite moving, actually. And it really made me think an awful lot about the impact that theatre can have, you know, on different people at different stages in their lives as well, because that play really resonated with them. That audience, the two audiences that we had, in very different ways, and different people had so many wonderful comments to make about their own personal stories as a part of that. And yeah, the audiences have been really positive to the work that, you know, that I've done and that I've been a part of since I've been here. So I've been really, I've enjoyed that about it. Auditioning different in India versus the West. I can't really answer that for other people. For me, is that the way that I audition is that we send people the part in advance, and that we do a first meeting, which is very much a kind of chemistry meeting, to see whether I get on with the actor and whether the actor gets on with me, and we kind of take it from there, really. And that, you know, if we get on, and if the reading goes well, and if I'm happy with, you know, kind of like stuff, oh, we can work together, then we'll maybe have a second meeting, and then maybe a third meeting, depending on if it's dependent on 2 or 3 people being in the room, and if it's dependent on chemistry of actors, then we'll do a third meet. But for me, is that the audition process is one of refinement, and it's also, it's as much about the actor meeting me and thinking, do I want to work with this guy, as it is about me meeting them. So that's the way that I view it, and I think that every director has a slightly different way of auditioning. So for me, it's all about making sure that we can work together and that we can collaborate, because we're going to spend a lot of time together creating a play. Shakespeare's tragedies, unnatural elements. What do you see as an unnatural element in Othello? Wow, that's a good question, isn't it? The storm, maybe. You've got an entire group of people you've got an entire army that turns up to fight in Cyprus, and a storm just takes everybody out, and all of a sudden you have this huge army there with nobody to fight, and you have a general with no war to win, and in a way that kind of creates the circumstances that then allow the rest of the play to unfold. Iago's an incredible character, but that he's not a character who I think is particularly premeditated. I think that when you look at the text and the way that he speaks, is it's all very off the cuff. He's making it up as he goes along, and he's reacting to things. So yeah, it's I would say that the natural element there is definitely the storm. And Ayat's question about Indian plays, I have a massive stack of them that I'm working my way through, and I'm still thinking about them at the moment. I've been given reading lists from various different friends who have been good enough to kind of like to put together a kind of like, this is your required reading. So I'm still working my way through it in Ayat, but yeah, I'm desperate to find a story that that I would be in a position to direct as well. Because I feel like I need to know more, I need to absorb more as well of it. So, but I'm reading a lot at the moment. I'm using my time to do that. Do I think that the business will move online permanently? No, but I think that there will be a bit of a transition there. I think in the interim is that all forms of entertainment are looking at as many different options as they possibly can. But I think that people will still crave the live experience. I think that it's a different thing. It's a completely different thing to be there in the presence of somebody telling you a story as it happens, or playing a musical instrument, or being a part of a concert. I think that is the unique selling point of live performance, and it's been around for thousands of years. I don't see it disappearing anytime soon. And in fact, I think that hopefully when this is over, that people will have such an appetite for it, because they will want to be together and experience things together and come together in groups and experience live storytelling and live events. Is that I really want to be able to I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm looking forward to being a part of that. But as far as online goes at the moment, is that there's some terrific work going on out there. There's some really inventive work going on out there, and I think that I'd love to kind of like to put some stuff out there, but we'll have to wait and see. The handkerchief is the unnatural element. Yeah, is there magic in it? I don't know. I think that depending on, I'm sure that someone's production does have that. The handkerchief does have something about it. You're absolutely right. Because it seems such an odd and unusual token, but it's one of those things. I think that that the handkerchief meant an awful lot more between Othello and Desdemona than maybe kind of like so that than is immediately kind of obvious in the text. So yeah, so that's an interesting thought though. Thank you so much, and good night.